Hey everybody, it's Candy, aka Brown Eyed Girl 69. How y'all doing today? Well, today is Saturday, August the 22nd of 2026. I decided I'm going to go ahead and make a follow-up video on mine and Daryl's time in San Diego. Um, I spoke a little bit about some of the resources there that they had, some that they didn't have. I think one of the things I mentioned was uh, or maybe I haven't mentioned, but I'll go ahead and mention it now, is they did have showers. They were surfer showers, so you could take a shower every day if you wanted. Free. Only drawback is it was out in public and it was cold water, so you basically had to clean yourself clothed. Um, they had feeds every week. Every Wednesday night they had a feed. Every Saturday they had a feed. Every other Tuesday they had a feed. If you were on food stamps, which most of the homeless population is, um, you always could use your food stamps in mostly convenience stores, but some fast food locations there in San Diego did accept food stamps. Um, Lots of ways people made money, especially if they're in California, because it's kind of difficult to panhandle depending on where you are. Um, they did recycling. So basically, they would push around a shopping cart and they would go and collect cans. Every can or bottle they could find on the ground, it was thrown in their cart. Some people had trash bags uh, that they filled up, and then some people just crushed them down and got as many into a cart as they could, and then they would get them to the recycling center and get their money. And so that's how a lot of people lived as well. Me and Daryl, I got on general assistance, and so we lived like kings and queens for about 3 months while we were there. The first 3 months we were there. Went up to LA. Wasn't too impressed with LA or Venice Beach. Most of California, I wasn't too impressed with, to be honest with you. We were just toughing it out, waiting until winter was over so we could head north. And we wanted some time out of the city to ourselves and nature as well. So we definitely had a transition period from the time we left San Diego until we arrived in Ashland. But I said I'd tell y'all some stories. Well, let's see. The guy that picked us up on the border of New Mexico and Arizona that drove us to Phoenix that eventually got us the ticket to San Diego. Well, in around the time frame that he got us the tickets to get to San Diego, he was in the midst of coming back out to Northern California um, to work on a weed farm. And he worked on the farm for the whole entire harvest season till they got everything completely harvested. And I think it was right around the early part of December. I can't remember exactly what day it was, but somewhere between December 7th and December 10th. Eric showed up again in California. We had already talked to him online, but he said that he wanted to give us a gift for Christmas. So we're like, cool, come on down. So he came down, arrived in Ocean Beach, picked me and Daryl up, took us and got us a hotel room. Um, I think that was the first time we stayed in that hotel. Maybe it was the second time. Um, got us a hotel room. Got us some food. I think we went to like a convenience store and stocked up on some like snack type foods. And then I think he ordered pizza or we got burgers or something like that. He hung out in the room for a while and then he said he had to leave because he had other places to be and other people to see. But the goodies that he left us was he left us, oh gosh, I don't know how many pieces of candy, but he gave us at least a good Ziploc baggie full of candy. Um, that was infused candy, edibles. And then he gave us what turned out to be about 2 ounces of weed. So before we left the hotel, because he gave us the weed, he gave us the weed in a glass jar, and because we carried everything on our back or whatever, we didn't want the jars breaking, you know. So we transferred everything into. I think we got us a couple baggies, and we was able to split it to where we had an ounce in each bag. And so we put one of the ounces underneath Daryl's backpack. There was these backpacks that we had gotten when we were in Boulder. They were really cool. They had a poncho that came with them. And that was where the poncho was kept. It was in this like secret pouch on the underside of the backpack. And Daryl had the poncho, but he didn't keep it under there anymore, you know. Um Basically what did he do? Or I think what he did was he rolled it up in the poncho and then stuck it underneath the bag in that secret zip pouch. And that's where it stayed. And then we just smoked off of what I had. Well, I had talked to my friend and I wanted a scale because I wanted, if we were going to be able to make a little bit of money, I wanted to make a little bit of money. But it wasn't like I was going to be out there pitching this shit, you know? That I wanted to be prepared in case somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, you got any weed?" I'd be like, "Well, how much you want?" And if they say, "Well, I want a couple grams," I'd have a couple grams already ready. You know what I mean? So I had all the stuff to do this, but I didn't have any bagged up in baggies. I just had this stuff. I had a scale. I had the baggies, but I didn't. And then I had the weed all in one bag. But I hadn't got around to making the little baggies yet. Daryl and I was handing weed out to people on occasion, you know, like I think one of our buddies had a birthday. So I was like, oh, shoot, here, come sit with us. And we smoked with them. And I wound up giving them some, you know. Happy birthday, man. Hope you have a good day. See you around, you know, kind of thing. Um, there was this one part of Ocean Beach that we hung out at a lot. It was called Dog Beach. And that was where the main huge bathrooms was and um, a bigger park seating area, and then like there was a completely different park that where people with dogs could take their dogs, and the dogs could run on the beach and stuff. And that was separate from the like human park area, but they called it all of it was called Dog Beach. So we're sitting there in the park, not too far from the bathrooms. We had a little small grocery cart. Didn't have a name on it anywhere. And we're just sitting there. We had most of our stuff in the cart. And we had a couple of our backpacks sitting on the table. And we're sitting there and we've been smoking. And then we put the stuff up. When we were done smoking, we were getting ready actually to get up and meander about our day. Right when the popo decided to pull up, and Daryl's like, oh, God. And we already had everything in our bags. We had our personal packs, but we had the shopping cart already packed, basically. And they roll up on us and they start talking to us about the shopping cart. And we're telling them, well, we just found it in an alley. It's not like we went and tried to hijack it from anywhere. We were just walking along and it was in the alleyway. And because there's not a name on it, we didn't know who it belonged to. So we just decided to utilize it. And they're like, oh, okay, blah, blah, blah. But that wasn't really why they were there. They just wanted to engage in conversation with us. And then they proceed to tell us that somebody had made a call in on us. And then they was asking us about drugs and all this other stuff. Daryl, he was basically pleading the fifth the whole entire time, using his Fourth Amendment right. Me being that I was still not really in tune to how the police department operates, gave up that right and allowed him to search my pack, and I had 21 grams of weed. 21 grams of weed and everything else that I told you that I mentioned, and I think I had our pipe or whatever. They got me with intention to distribute, even though it was under an ounce. So 3/4 of an ounce of weed was intent to distribute. I laughed at him. I told him, man, you guys are fools. I was like, if you think this, I'm a homeless lady out here that's going to be trying to make up some money, give me a flipping break. Y'all are idiots. I'm like, why don't y'all go arrest the real criminals? You know, those that are like making meth, those that are like, selling heroin, those that are out, trafficking women and children, murderers, rapists, all those types of things. Those that commit actual crimes, not people like me. Because I'm not a criminal. You can check my whole entire past, and you'll see I have no criminal past whatsoever. I'm 100% clean. But they went ahead and arrested me. They tried to get Daryl, but he wasn't playing their game. So he was able to save what we did have left. They took me to jail. This was like 3 days before Christmas. They took me to jail, and I was in jail 23rd, the 24th, 25th. I went to court on the 26th early in the morning, and then by that evening I was getting out of jail. They released me, and I was on my way back to Daryl. And trust me, I was trying to make my way back to him as quickly as I could. Once I got back to Ocean Beach, because they had me out in this place called Santee, California. It's where the women's prison is. Oh yeah, I don't know how many miles it is. I'd have to look it up, but it was several miles away from where Daryl was. And on the night they released me with this other gal. So they let two of us out at the same time. When we first got out, there's a couple of taxi drivers sitting out there at the because they know at the time that they release people. So there's these taxi drivers hoping, I guess, that they can get one of the, you know, newly released prisoners to say, hey, I need a ride. Well, if you ain't got no money, you know what I mean? So we didn't have no money. All we had was a token. They gave us a token to ride the bus or the train or whatever to get back down to wherever it is we needed to go to. And then the gal that I got released, I guess when they booked her in, she had her bail bondsman or something like that hold her personal items. Or hold something. She had to pick something up from her bail bondsman. I can't remember exactly what it was. But when we got to her bail bonds place, which wasn't that far from the prison, it was just like down and around the corner. The dude had coffee going and he had some snacks. And he offered us some hot coffee and some snacks. He had a bathroom, and a phone. So I was able to use his phone so I could call Daryl and let Daryl know I was out and that I was heading back to Ocean Beach and that I would arrive as soon as I could. But to be on the lookout for me and where would you be when I get there. So he pretty much told me the area he would be in when, you know, I arrived. Well, they let us out at 7 o'clock, and I think I didn't arrive. I arrived back on, I think it was like the 9:20 bus. By the time I walked down to where Daryl was, it was like 9:26, 9:30, something like that. And I'll tell you what, we were so happy to see each other. We just dropped all of our stuff and just stood there and hugged in this like back alley next to one of our friends' little locations that he lived at. And stood there and cried and hugged each other and hugged, kissed, cried. And then, like, over the next few days, some of our other friends kept coming up to me and telling me, Candy, well, you were gone, man. We had to keep an eye on Daryl. And I'm like, really? Why? And they're like, cuz he kept saying, well, they took my best friend. They took my best friend. He was my best friend, too. I don't know, man. Being in jail for 3 days, I don't think it made me any different than I was before I went in. But it definitely gave me a different perspective on when I came out. Because when they lock that door behind you, that's it. And if you don't have a roommate, it's you, you, and you. It's all you there with yourself, dealing with yourself. Because I didn't have. They did have a TV out in like the main room, where they served all the dinner and lunches and breakfast and stuff. And it was a holiday season, so they had a whole bunch of holiday stuff on, like holiday cartoons, movies, stuff like that. So if we wanted to come out of ourselves, we could. We didn't have to stay in ourselves. But I chose to not really interact, I guess, with any of the other girls in there because I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I wasn't a hardened criminal like some of these women were. I was just one of those that got caught at the wrong time with a little bit of weed in her possession in a state who had not completely legalized it yet. It was just medically legal. It wasn't recreational at that point in time. That was December of 2015. No, 2014. December 2014. But because of a new law that had passed in November of 2014, it was basically similar to the three strikes and you're out kind of rule. But if you were found to have not had any type of criminal history or past or any kind of record at all in the state of California, you're let out. And that's what happened to me. They took my charge from basically I think a felony to a misdemeanor to completely dismissing it, throwing it out of court, and never to be seen or heard from again, other than from me, the one that talks about it. So that was a major event that happened to me while I was in San Diego, California. I got out, I cleaned up my nose, I cleaned up. I mean, me and Daryl was more aware than ever. We were on more heightened awareness than we were beforehand. We had to deal with cops sometimes. Sometimes if we couldn't get back to our regular location where we normally slept, or if where the place where most people normally slept was kind of told swept clean for a while, so to speak, where they kind of like moved us on down the way and we had to find other places to sleep for the moment. it was hard because sometimes we had to try to find an out of the way space without if not it being too far out of the way. And it was usually right there in town, you know. Well, there was this doctor's office, and there was it was had like a courtyard, so people kind of slept around the doctor's office. Uh, I wouldn't call it a business park because it wasn't really a business park. I think there was two businesses in there, a doctor's office and maybe a dentist office. But between the two offices, there was like a hallway that went from one end of the building to the other end of the building, but it was outside. So people would hold up in there, and then people would hold up in and around the other portions of that building. Daryl and I was on the backside one night, just me and him in the corner. We'd seen people crash out there before, so we thought, well, we'll do it ourselves because, you know. And there's other people around. Well, I guess I guess Ocean Beach police decided to raid that place that night because they woke everybody up that was around and told them to get their stuff and be on their way. And this is like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Ridiculous. Knowing that if you do get up and get all your stuff, you're really not going to have enough time to go find another place to lay down all your stuff, gear, fall asleep, and be up before the sun comes up again. You know, because most homeless people were always up at least by 6 a.m. in the morning. Sometimes 7 a.m. depending on where you slept. If you slept more out in the athletic fields and in the outlying areas of Ocean Beach, you had a better chance of sleeping until 7 in the morning. But if you were in town, you definitely had to be up and about before any of these businesses opened up or people started showing up to these places. So that's just a little portion of some stories there about San Diego. I will say this will be the one story I talk about. We left in February, we went to LA, and then we came back. Okay, well, we came back. I met this gal named Melody, and she had two babies, twin baby boy and girl, and they were just a few months old. They were about 7, 8 months old, and there was a store called the Newport Convenience Store, and they sell all sorts of food, both hot and cold, drinks, all that. It was a convenience store as well as a grill, hot bar, cold bar kind of thing. And so you could buy cold food, some of their sandwiches and whatnot, some of their acai bowls, all that with your food stamp card. So me and Daryl ate there a lot. And we were sitting there eating our lunch one day when this lady and her babies rolled by. And I asked her if I could take a picture of her and them because I thought they were really cute. She said, sure. Well, then I posted it online and talked about the little story of the conversation that she had with Daryl and I. And I think she even gave us like a little bit of money, like $10 or something like that. Nothing major. And was on her way. Well, when I posted it, I guess somebody else in Ocean Beach had seen it or something and they tagged her in it. And so then I became friends with her. And through her, I met some other Ocean Beach locals. And most of these Ocean Beach locals had their own business. And I think it was about once a month they got together and had a meeting. And new people was being brought into the fold and everything. So I thought that would be a perfect way for me to meet people and introduce them to me as well as introduce Daryl to them in a way, so to speak, without Daryl being there. I made up business cards. I made up flyers. I passed them around to all the business owners. Told them to please post the flyers up in their windows that had tags with our phone number on them so they could contact Daryl. Um, but we were basically trying to advertise Daryl giving out guitar lessons. So maybe we could build up, some students, and if they were in the local area, and he could build up enough students within a short period of time, or that we were having a good rolling in of funds, then possibly we could get up and off of the streets. It was our hope anyway. Never came to fruition. But I met a lot of great people because of it. And one of the people that I met through that situation, her name was KT. And she had a little dog, and her little dog had her own little following on social media. KT was very nice and brought me and Daryl into her home for about 3, 4 weeks. No, more like 2.5, 3 weeks. Uh, so we slept in her living room. We was able to utilize her shower. We was able to utilize her internet, and she smoked a ton of weed. Well, when we left, she gave us a tent, 2 sleeping bags, um, a baggie full of roaches that she called roaches, but they were like that long, so they were like a joint to us. Um, and some, I don't know, that was our other friend.